Mark, this issue about reforming retirement in France, it's been a rocky, thorny, difficult subject for many governments, hasn't it? And it has already been so for Emmanuel Macron.
Absolutely. He tried a different kind of reform during his first mandate. There was a huge social movement on the streets. He had struggles in parliament. Then COVID hit and it never went further. This time he's going with a simpler reform, but more explosive one, especially for the unions. They've said, including so-called reformist unions, that raising the legal age of retirement is a red flag for them, and that they will immediately call for strikes, demonstrations, and so on. And so this is why the Prime Minister just said, our initial idea, the President's initial idea, was to push the retirement age to 65 after dialogue, thorough discussions with the unions, with other political parties. We've decided that it would only be 64 by 2030. It means that essentially, as of next September, if this goes through Parliament and is implemented, the retirement age would be raised by a quarter during the next 8 years. So she really took time to say this is a balanced project. This is about justice. This is about raising also the level of the pensions, especially the small pensions. This is not a way to tear apart this cherished cradle to the grave welfare system for the pensions that we have here in France, because she knows that there is opposition in Parliament. As I mentioned, there's likely opposition mobilization on the streets, and the polls tell us and tell her that the majority of the French are against this. So she announced that it would be gradual, but she also said nothing is set in stone, nothing is final. We're open to dialogue, we're open to discussion. However, clearly by saying that the legal age would be raised to 64 and not to 65, and also by saying that the raise in small pensions to 1,200 euros would apply not only to future retirees, but a chunk of those already retired, she's meeting the demands of the key group in Parliament, the Conservative group. This is their two main demands, 64, and that the raise in minimum pension will also be applied to those already retired and not only to future ones. And basically, they say, okay, if this is the project, if this is the bill, we'll vote for it. And the government only has a relative majority. They need the 62 votes in Parliament. The big question is whether this will be enough, because in France, yes, you can vote bills in Parliament, but especially on those social reform issues, the answer is not only in Parliament, but it's on the streets.
So what I'm getting is that it's something that needs to be changed. The Prime Minister said it's balanced. It looks like the government is looking to actually sort of keep everybody involved in this, but that thorny issue of raising the retirement age might be the thing that pushes the 8 main unions across France to actually call some action and create the kind of characteristics of demonstration on the streets that people used to seeing.
Right, because as a union leader was pointing out, he said after meeting the Prime Minister last week, he said, you've done something really great. The unions are united like they haven't been for a decade. But the problem for you is that they're united against your project. And so this is, yes, it's true. Generally, there are some unions who say, yes, we might tinker with the reform system and so on. They want a kind of Scandinavian-like model. It's a bit technical, which is what Emmanuel Macron had in mind. But just raising the retirement age, asking people to work longer, for them, it's a red flag. The government says, it's for justice, and it's also because there is a deficit, and it's only going to grow because the demographics show that, there are less people working and more people retiring because they live longer, et cetera, et cetera. I'm not going to lay out all the argument because it's so well known. But the unions are saying, no, It's not true. The deficit is only small given the hundreds of billions of dollars spent each year by the state to pay for pensions. So not everyone agrees. The government is hoping that it can push this through Parliament, that because of COVID fatigue, of war fatigue, of inflation worries and so on, the unions will not be able to mobilize en masse in the street. But no one knows. No one knows. And it's also a probability that the government is also keeping some bullets dry, because they might make some further concessions. In Parliament, it seems they have a deal with the Conservative Party. But maybe if things turn sour on the streets and they see that there are mass demonstrations, but especially strikes, especially in the transport system, they might need to concede more. It's always a very difficult, controversial issue, and this should not be different.